Online marketplaces are an excellent way to buy and sell second-hand goods, but they become a breeding ground for scams and illegal activity. You've probably seen all about the scams that involve paying for an item that doesn't really exist. But today I'm going to share my story about something that could have been potentially way more sinister. So if you've been watching my channel, you'll know that I'm doing a bike flipping challenge where I'm buying and then selling bicycles for more money. In this particular instance, I was looking on Facebook Marketplace for a rundown bike that needed some work doing to it. And I'd found a Carrera I thought was a pretty good deal, but it wasn't too good to be true. Anyway, I've been communicating with the seller of this bike over a number of days, and one thing that struck me was how slow they were to reply. One of the things that I was trying to do was to haggle down the price of the bike, and despite them being extremely slow on the communication, all of a sudden one evening they contacted me and said, look, you can have it for that price, but I want it gone today. This urgency in itself is not at all abnormal. In fact, I would say it's fairly normal when you're asking for a discount that the seller will want you to come right there and then to pick it up. But I think what was making me feel uneasy in this instance was the contrast between the fact that before the seller was very lethargic. It almost felt like they didn't want to sell me the bike, to then now where they urgently wanted me to come pick it up. Because I'm doing this as part of a challenge and because I want to get the videos out every 2 weeks, I thought, do you know what, I'm going to get this bike now and then I can get on making the video. Normally before I'll go to collect a bike, as soon as I'm given the postcode, I'll just do a quick check of the area to make sure it's not dodgy. And I'll also have a look at the person's Facebook profile to make sure it's legitimate, they're an actual person. But because of that urgency, I didn't do any of my normal checks. So as soon as I was given the postcode, I hopped in the car and drove the 45-minute journey to go and collect the bike. And as I was beginning to get closer and closer, I was starting to feel a little bit nervous. And I think that's because the light was beginning to go. So the sat-nav was leading me down a cul-de-sac, which if you don't know what that is, it's essentially a dead-end street. So you'll get to the very end and then you have to turn around and come back on yourself to get to the main road. And in this case, it was quite a weird cul-de-sac because it almost bottlenecked in the middle. So the pavement came right out and there was only enough room for one car. I parked right on the very outskirts of that bottleneck so that it gave me the option to be able to turn around and get out of there if I needed to. So normally what happens is you'll message the seller to let them know that you're there, and then within a few minutes they'll message you back with the house number or the address. But in this case, they did neither. In fact, they didn't respond at all. So after about 15 minutes of waiting and checking my phone, the seller hadn't even seen my message to say that I was there. And I was starting to lose a little bit of patience. And against my better judgment, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to drive to the end of the road and just make sure that there's nobody waiting with a bike. So I drove to the end of the road and turned around and I couldn't see anybody. And I thought, you know what, this person's just a time waster, they're not serious. But I thought I'd give them one last chance and just check my phone. And at this point, they'd seen my message. So I thought, oh, finally, they're going to respond and then I can just get the bike and then get home. So I started to look around at the houses, make sure that no one was stood in any of the doors. I noticed in my rear view mirror, about 10 metres back from the car, there was two lads with hoods up and some sort of either balaclava or face covering. But what I could see was they were looking directly at my car. So at that point I got a really bad feeling and put the car into gear and just immediately got out of there. Luckily I got through the bottleneck with no problems and then out of the junction. I noticed in my rear view mirror was a blue Skoda Octavia that came screaming around one of the bends and went straight into the cul-de-sac that I'd just come from and actually blocked off the entrance to the cul-de-sac. And when I continued to look back, I could see that the two lads that I'd seen before were approaching this car and having some sort of dialogue with the person. Now, maybe I could be overthinking all this, and maybe it's nothing, but I was thinking on the way home, what if that car was coming to block me in and the two lads were coming to try and mug me? And again, this might be pure conjecture and it might just be me overthinking. I just thought it was really odd how all of these events had come together. You know, me going to pick up the bike, the seller not responding, but then when the seller had seen the message, these two lads appeared. I don't know, it all just seemed maybe too much of a coincidence. On the other hand, it would seem like a really strange way to mug somebody because I'd only agreed to pay £40 for the bike. So I only had £40 cash. And I mean, what else are they going to take from me? I had my phone, that's probably only worth £100. My car, which again, they don't know if I'm going to be arriving in a Lamborghini Huracan, well, probably not if I'm going to pick up a bike, but some sort of high value car, or I'm coming in a high mileage Toyota. Or they could have been after the project that I've been working on, so check out the channel next week for that. So yeah, I mean, I tried not to really think too much about it, but I just got checking online just to see if there's anything that had happened like this before. And I could only find one instance recently where people have been mugged from going to buy bikes on Facebook Marketplace in Bolton in Manchester. So it isn't a completely unheard of thing. Also, the seller's profile was completely empty. Only been created about 3 months before, of a guy that doesn't exist in any of the local Facebook groups and was friends with only about 5 or so people. And if I'd have just done a bit of due diligence and looked at this, I probably would have never wasted my time going there anyway and never put myself in a potentially risky situation. So what did I do about all this then? Unfortunately, I only have a front-facing dash cam, and it didn't capture the registration of the Skoda, and it didn't capture these two individuals. So the only evidence that I had was that someone just didn't contact me on Facebook Marketplace when I arrived at their address. And so because of that, I thought, do you know what, I'm not going to waste any police time, but what I am going to do, because I have got evidence of it, is contact Facebook to let them know that that person was completely not in the right and they had wasted my time. And so I believe that person now is completely unable to sell on Facebook Marketplace. And so if these people did have bad intent, hopefully this has slowed them down a little bit. And if they didn't, and it was just a genuine mistake, well, that's taught that person not to waste people's time. So I wanted this video to serve as just a little bit of a warning that if you feel like something isn't right, don't be pressured. Don't feel like there's any urgency to go and buy something. If an item's too good to be true, it generally is. And there's always other opportunities out there. Never feel rushed. Always do your research. Always do your due diligence. Because when you get that bad feeling, in the best case, it's just someone trying to waste your time. And in the worst case, it could be something more serious. So anyway, let me know if you've ever had to deal with anything like this in the comments below. Let me know if you think I'm just overthinking this and it's actually nothing. But yeah, thanks ever so much for watching. And if you like mountain biking or bike flipping, make sure to check out my other videos as well. Thank you very much.